The North Pacific, 1943. A shroud of impenetrable fog clung to the frigid waters, a natural curtain obscuring the deadly dance of war. Deep within this swirling grey abyss, a lone British destroyer, HMS Vigilant, steamed silently, its crew on edge. Unbeknownst to them, a formidable Japanese convoy, 14 ships strong, was bearing down, their captains confident in the fog's protective embrace. The Royal Navy, often stretched thin across global theatres, had always relied on grit and ingenuity. This night, however, it would be something more, a silent revolution that would turn the tide. A secret weapon, barely understood, was about to grant Vigilant an impossible advantage. Tokyo would soon learn, to its profound shock, that the fog offered no sanctuary at all. The year was 1943, a grim period for the Allied forces in the Pacific. The Japanese Imperial Navy, a formidable and well-equipped adversary, held significant sway, their expansion seemingly unstoppable. British forces, though valiant, were often outmatched and spread perilously thin, battling on multiple fronts from the Atlantic to the Mediterranean, and now, increasingly, in the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Pacific. Conventional naval tactics, honed over centuries, were proving insufficient against an enemy that combined fierce determination with cutting-edge naval design. The strategic situation was dire. Supply lines were constantly threatened, and the sheer scale of Japanese naval power meant that any direct confrontation often resulted in heavy Allied losses. Over the preceding 18 months, intelligence reports indicated the loss of over 30 Allied merchant vessels and several smaller warships to Japanese patrols and submarines in these treacherous waters, a stark reminder of their strategic vulnerability. It was against this backdrop of mounting pressure and tactical frustration that Captain Alistair Finch, a man whose quiet demeanour belied a steel-trap mind, took command of HMS Vigilant. Finch, a veteran of the Atlantic convoys, understood the brutal realities of naval warfare. His crew, a motley but dedicated collection of lads from Liverpool, Glasgow, and the home counties, shared his grim determination. Among them was Petty Officer Thomas "Tommy" Atkins, a radar operator whose keen eyes and even keener ears were becoming indispensable. Tommy, a quiet lad from Kent, had a knack for coaxing signals from the temperamental new radar sets, a technology still viewed with a healthy dose of skepticism by many within the Admiralty. A glorified echo sounder, that's what it is. Commander Davies, Finch's executive officer, had grumbled during their initial briefings, reflecting a common sentiment among the old guard. The Vigilant itself was a workhorse, a V-class destroyer, sturdy but not state-of-the-art. Its cramped quarters, perpetually damp and smelling of diesel and salt, were home to 180 souls. The constant thrum of the engines, the creak of the bulkheads, and the rhythmic slap of waves against the hull were the soundtrack to their lives. Today, however, an additional element dominated: the fog. It had rolled in thick and fast, a dense, suffocating blanket that reduced visibility to mere meters. The air was heavy, cold and damp, clinging to uniforms and seeping into bones. The tension aboard was palpable, a silent hum beneath the surface noise. Every man knew the danger. Fog was a double-edged sword, offering concealment but also increasing the risk of collision, or worse, an unseen enemy attack. The Admiralty, desperate for any advantage, had reluctantly sanctioned the deployment of a handful of destroyers equipped with experimental radar systems for reconnaissance missions in areas deemed too risky for larger vessels. The idea was to test the technology in real-world conditions, to see if it could offer a tactical edge. Finch, despite the skepticism of his superiors, had embraced the challenge. He saw the potential, a glimmer of hope in the overwhelming darkness. The mission was simple, yet fraught with peril. Patrol a known Japanese shipping lane, gather intelligence, and, if possible, disrupt enemy movements. The odds were overwhelmingly against them. The Vigilant was a single destroyer, armed with torpedoes and guns, but against a potential convoy, it was a minnow, in a sea of sharks. Yet the decision was made. With a quiet resolve that echoed the keep calm and carry on spirit of the nation, HMS Vigilant steamed into the impenetrable grey, a tiny speck of British defiance embarking on a mission that many considered suicidal. Life aboard HMS Vigilant was a relentless grind, a testament to the endurance of the Royal Navy. The destroyer, designed for speed and agility, offered little in the way of comfort. Spaces were impossibly cramped, every bulkhead a potential obstacle, every passageway a tight squeeze. The air, thick with the smell of oil, sweat, and stale tea, was a constant reminder of their confinement. Fatigue was a permanent fixture etched into the lines around the crew's eyes, a heavy cloak that settled over every man during their long, arduous watches. Yet vigilance was paramount. The Pacific was an unforgiving theater, and a moment's lapse could spell disaster. The constant rocking and pitching of the vessel, even in relatively calm seas, added to the physical strain, making simple tasks a challenge and sleep a fleeting luxury. The heart of Vigilant's mission lay in its experimental Type 271 radar, a bulky, temperamental piece of equipment that occupied a significant portion of the ship's limited internal space. Petty Officer Atkins, hunched over the glowing cathode ray tube, was its high priest. The radar, a marvel of British engineering, promised to pierce the veil of fog and darkness, offering a glimpse of the unseen. But it was far from perfect. Its range was limited, its signals often obscured by sea clutter, and its delicate components prone to failure in the harsh maritime environment. Alongside the radar, the ship's sonar operators maintained their own silent vigil, listening for the telltale thrum of propellers beneath the waves. Captain Finch, a proponent of tactical innovation, had also drilled his crew in new, aggressive torpedo attack doctrines designed to maximize the impact of a surprise encounter, even against superior numbers. The challenges were manifold. Beyond the temperamental equipment, the weather itself was a formidable adversary. The fog, now thicker than ever, reduced visibility to zero, making navigation a terrifying exercise in faith and dead reckoning. The sea, though not violently rough, was choppy, sending spray over the decks and making any outdoor activity perilous. Human fatigue was a constant battle. Men worked in shifts, but the psychological strain of constant alert, the knowledge that death could strike from the unseen, wore them down. Supply constraints meant that spare parts for the radar were scarce, and every repair was an improvisation. A testament to the make-do-and-mend spirit that defined wartime Britain. Despite the hardships, the crew of Vigilant displayed a remarkable resilience. There was a dry, understated humor that surfaced in the darkest moments. A quick wit exchanged over a mug of lukewarm tea, a shared joke about the Admiralty's latest directive. It was a coping mechanism, a way to keep spirits up when the odds seemed insurmountable. They were a family, bound by shared danger and a common purpose. Many carried the weight of separated families, wives and children left behind in a Britain scarred by the Blitz. Letters from home, when they arrived, were cherished, a fragile link to a world they fought to protect. The psychological strain was immense, the constant threat of enemy action, the isolation of the vast ocean, the knowledge that rescue might be hours, if not days, away. Yet they pressed on. The operation continued, a slow, methodical patrol through the grey expanse. The radar hummed, its green sweep a hypnotic dance across the screen. Finch paced the bridge, his eyes scanning the impenetrable fog, his ears attuned to every sound. He knew that success was far from guaranteed, that at any moment the fog could lift, revealing a Japanese battle group ready to pounce. But for now, they had a chance, a slim, improbable chance, born of British ingenuity and the unwavering courage of ordinary men doing extraordinary things. The Vigilant was a tiny beacon of hope, pushing through the unknown, its crew a living embodiment of the nation's steadfast resolve. The moment arrived with a chilling, almost surreal quietness. Petty Officer Atkins, his eyes glued to the radar screen, suddenly stiffened. "Captain, contact, bearing 030, range 12 miles. Multiple contacts, sir. Looks like a lot of them." His voice, usually calm, held a tremor of disbelief. On the screen, faint but distinct blips began to resolve themselves into a terrifying pattern. Not one, not two, but 14 separate vessels, steaming in formation. A Japanese convoy, precisely as intelligence had suggested, but far larger than anticipated. And they were heading directly into Vigilant's path, utterly blind in the thick, suffocating fog. Aboard the Japanese flagship, the heavy cruiser Ioba, Admiral Koga, a man of rigid doctrine and unwavering confidence in his fleet's superiority, felt a prickle of unease. The fog, while offering excellent concealment for his vital supply convoy, also made him nervous. His lookouts, straining their eyes into the grey void, reported nothing. Their own rudimentary radar, less advanced than the British Type 271, was struggling with the heavy atmospheric conditions, showing only a confused jumble of sea clutter. "Maintain formation, speed 20 knots, Koga barked, his voice betraying none of his internal disquiet. He believed the fog was his ally, a protective blanket. He never imagined it was a death shroud, woven by an unseen enemy. Captain Finch, however, saw everything. The radar painted a clear picture of the Japanese formation, their precise course and speed. The tactical advantage was staggering. While the Japanese relied on visual sightings and rigid formations, Vigilant was operating in a dimension they couldn't perceive. "All hands to action stations. Prepare torpedo tubes. Tubes 1 and 2. Set depth 5 feet. Spread 3 degrees. Finch's orders cut through the tension on the bridge, sharp and decisive. The crew, though awestruck by the sheer number of enemy contacts, moved with practiced efficiency, their training kicking in. The first engagement was swift and brutal. Vigilant, a ghost in the fog, closed the distance, its radar guiding it with deadly precision. The Japanese ships, their silhouettes barely visible even at close range, were utterly unprepared. The destroyer launched its torpedoes, a silent, deadly spread aimed at the heart of the convoy. Moments later, the night was rent by a series of thunderous explosions. 2 Japanese merchant ships, laden with vital supplies, erupted in fiery plumes, their hulls torn open by the British torpedoes. Confusion reigned supreme on the Japanese side. Searchlights cut through the fog, frantic and aimless, illuminating nothing but the swirling mist. Japanese destroyers, their captains bewildered, fired wildly into the grey, their shells splashing harmlessly into the empty sea. Admiral Koga, receiving fragmented reports of explosions and unseen attacks, was utterly perplexed. "What is happening? Where is the enemy?" he demanded, his face a mask of disbelief. His intelligence officers, usually so precise, could offer no explanation. The rigid Japanese naval doctrine, which emphasized visual combat and disciplined formations, was utterly failing against an enemy that simply wasn't there to be seen. The British, with their flexible approach and their new mysterious technology, had turned the very conditions that should have protected the Japanese into their greatest vulnerability. The Vigilant, having delivered its devastating blow, slipped away into the fog, a phantom of the deep. The Japanese, reeling from the shock, began to realize they faced an unprecedented challenge, an invisible foe they could not counter, a new kind of warfare that rendered their traditional strengths obsolete. The engagement in the fog, though a relatively small skirmish in the grand tapestry of the Pacific War, had an outsized impact. HMS Vigilant, having launched its torpedoes with devastating effect, continued to harass the disoriented Japanese convoy for several hours, using its radar to maintain a safe distance while guiding other, smaller British and Australian vessels to the area as the fog began to thin. By dawn, the full extent of the damage was clear. 3 Japanese merchant ships sunk, 2 more heavily damaged and listing, and a destroyer crippled. More importantly, the convoy, vital for Japanese operations in the region, was scattered and delayed, its mission severely compromised. Lives were saved, not just those aboard Vigilant, but countless Allied soldiers and civilians who would have faced the supplies carried by those ships. It was a crucial, if unsung, contribution to the Allied victory, demonstrating that ingenuity could overcome overwhelming numerical superiority. The lasting consequences of Vigilant's encounter were profound. It served as a stark, undeniable validation of radar technology in naval warfare, proving its capability to transform combat in conditions where traditional senses were useless. The Admiralty, initially skeptical, now poured resources into radar development and training, accelerating its integration across the fleet. Naval warfare would never be the same. The era of blind engagements was over. The ability to see through fog and darkness became a decisive factor, shifting the balance of power in countless future encounters. The protagonists of this dramatic tale continued their service. Captain Alistair Finch, his quiet determination vindicated, went on to command a flotilla of destroyers, his tactical innovations becoming standard practice. Petty Officer Thomas Atkins, the unassuming radar operator, became a highly sought-after expert, training a new generation of technicians. Many of the crew, after the war, returned to civilian life, their wartime experiences shaping them in indelible ways. Their recognition, like that of many unsung heroes, was often delayed, overshadowed by larger battles and more public victories. Yet, their story, meticulously pieced together decades later by historians sifting through declassified archives and interviewing the dwindling number of survivors, revealed the true extent of their courage and foresight. The final statistics were compelling. The Vigilant engagement alone accounted for the neutralization of nearly 20% of the Japanese convoy's capacity, a significant blow to their logistical chain. But the strategic impact went far beyond mere numbers. It sowed seeds of doubt and confusion within the Japanese command, forcing them to re-evaluate their tactics and technology, a process that cost them precious time and resources. This operation, born of necessity and executed with quiet brilliance, underscored the power of innovation, the resilience of the human spirit, and the extraordinary feats achievable by ordinary people under immense pressure. It reflected the very essence of the British national character, a steadfast resilience in the face of adversity, an innate ability to improvise and innovate when the chips were down, and a quiet, unwavering determination to see things through, no matter the odds. The story of HMS Vigilant and its unseen triumph in the fog proved a fundamental truth, that even in the darkest hours, human ingenuity, coupled with unwavering courage, can pierce through the deepest gloom and turn the tide of history. If you found this incredible tale of British ingenuity and courage in the face of overwhelming odds as captivating as we did, please consider giving this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us bring more forgotten stories of wartime heroism to light. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more fascinating insights into the Royal Navy's pivotal role in World War II. And do let us know in the comments below what other aspects of naval history you'd like us to explore next. Cheerio!